Well, it's been a long journey. After seeing 300 movies, we want to take this time to highlight the best of the best as well as the worst of the worst. Like the Academy Awards and the Razzies, we have nominated several films for several different categories, such as Best Supporting Character, Best Plot, and Worst Effects, culminating with our overall Best and Worst films. Each category has 10 nominees, and we have picked out a winner from these 10. Alright, think you get the drill? Let's get started.
Let's start off strong. The best heroes are those you can look up to or relate to, so these were some of our faves. Keep in mind, we're judging just the characters and not the actors. We just want to give credit where credit is due. Simba, from The Lion King, voiced by Matthew Broderick. A child at heart who grows to stand up for himself and goes from a scared child to a respected leader. Forrest Gump, from Forrest Gump, played by Tom Hanks. A character who could have easily been annoying, but turned out to be very inspiring and heartwarming. Steve Rogers, from the MCU, played by Chris Evans. An optimistic patriot with a pretty silly-looking design, but became an icon who still fights for what he believes in. Mulan, from Mulan, voiced by Ming-Na Wen. She saved her father, she saved her country, but most of all, she believed in herself through the whole thing. Marlin, from Finding Nemo, voiced by Albert Brooks. A father that overcame his own fears in order to save what he loves most, his son. John Creasy, from Man on Fire, played by Denzel Washington. He went to great lengths to find a girl he had no real reason to care for. Very great lengths. Robert Neville, from I Am Legend, played by Will Smith. A broken man who gave up everything in the face of certain death. Benjamin Button, from The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, played mostly by Brad Pitt, but also other various actors. A remarkable yet normal life, played in reverse. Carl Fredricksen, from Up, voiced by Ed Asner. And finally, Peter Parker from the MCU, played by Tom Holland. He's not just a superhero, he's also just a boy looking to do the right thing. And the winner is Carl Fredricksen from Up. Everything Carl does, you completely understand, even if it's not the best decision, and the concept of moving on after your loved one has passed away is incredibly moving and thought-provoking.
Alright, so of course after talking about the best, we gotta talk about the worst protagonist. As was said by Mai, we're only judging the characters and not the actors who are portraying them. We just need to identify them in some way. Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber, played by Jim Carrey. Ruining other people's lives for literally no reason is not that funny. Rory McAvoy from Tin Cup, played by Kevin Costner. A privileged white dude just complains like a toddler for 2.5 hours and breaks a bunch of golf clubs, yet somehow wins the tournament. Julianne Potter from My Best Friend's Wedding, played by Julia Rogers. Wanting to ruin your friend's wedding does not make you quirky. It just makes you a psychopath. The Spice Girls from Spice World, played by the Spice Girls. I mean, did you really expect anything else from them? William Shakespeare from Shakespeare in Love, played by Joseph Fiennes. A pretentious, condescending jerkwad who really... I mean, the whole movie just is a can of worms. Maggie and Ike from Runaway Bride, played by Julia Rogers and Richard Gere. Match made in hell. Tom and Sarah from Just Married, played by Ashton Kutcher and Brittany Murphy. On the other hand, a match that really shouldn't have been made at all. Peter Sanderson from Bringing Down the House, played by Steve Martin. A way to show how much you care about Queen Latifah's character by literally never standing up for her at all. Oscar from Shark Tale, voiced by Will Smith. What was accomplished at the end of this movie? Nothing. Just nothing. Jacques Cousteau from Pink Panther, played by Steve Martin. Just not funny whatsoever. And the winner of this sad, pathetic list is Julianne Potter from My Best Friend's Wedding. She spends the movie pining over some guy who she wanted to marry despite not actually even trying to get with him, and then ruins that person's wedding all while trying to come off as sympathetic. It's just plain horrible.
But the main character is just that, the main character. There are many supporting characters that deserve just as much credit. Lieutenant Dan Taylor from Forrest Gump, played by Gary Sinise. Aside from Forrest, he has the best character development, going from a trigger-happy honor chaser to a genuinely caring friend who accepts his second chance. Zeus Carver from Die Hard with a Vengeance, played by Samuel Jackson. He adds personality and is a great foil to McClane. Marilyn Lovell from Apollo 13, played by Kathleen Quinlan. Through her struggles, you see and understand what's going on the personal side of a mission gone wrong. Aaron Stampler from Primal Fear, played by Edward Norton. He's someone who you legitimately aren't sure about. Norton's performance is excellent and keeps you on your toes throughout the movie. The Army from Mulan, voiced by various voice actors. Along with the challenges of becoming a soldier, Mulan's comrades serve as foils to help her find the strength to save China. Jane Porter from Tarzan, voiced by Minnie Driver. Curious, relatable, and yet still strong, Jane is a perfect counterpoint to Tarzan. Ed Masry from Aaron Brockovich, played by Albert Finney. He provides the voice of reason and a guiding hand that attempts to keep Aaron in check, a mentor if you will. Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, played by Ian McKellen. The perfect balance of wise old mentor and old man who could kick your ass. Harvey Dent from The Dark Knight, played by Aaron Eckhart. His fall from grace is portrayed extremely well. He's likable as Harvey and tragic as Two-Face. And finally, Matt Kowalski from Gravity, played by George Clooney. Whether he's a physical presence or not, he leaves a lasting impact on both Ryan and the audience. And the winner is Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. He's funny, he's sad, he's awkward, and he's relatable. His character growth is one of the most fascinating we've ever seen.
You guys saw the best, but now it's time for all the shitty sidekicks and whatnot. Harry Dunn from Dumb and Dumber, played by Jeff Daniels. Is there even a difference between him and Jim Carrey? If you hate one, you hate the other. It's Dumb and Dumber, after all. Albert Goldman from The Birdcage, played by Nathan Lane. I get what they're doing with this character, but he just comes off as really grating and hard to deal with. Everyone from Armageddon, played by a lot of people. They just suck. Like, literally everyone sucks. Amanda Kirby from Jurassic Park 3, played by Téa Leoni.
Okay, you're free. You're free.
The adults for bringing down the house. Played by, well, anyone over 18. Every adult in this movie is either spineless, brainless, or super racist. Steve Stifler from American Wedding, played by Sean William Scott. He's every fuckboy you've ever known, combined. Mary Jane Watson from Spider-Man 2, played by Kirsten Dunst. Imagine getting to your wedding reception and getting a message that the bride stands you up after she had literal weeks to call off the wedding. Oh, and she screams too. Jack Burns for Meet the Parents and Meet the Fockers, played by Robert De Niro. He comes off as such an elitist asshole, which, yeah, that's the point, but it's not enjoyable to watch at all. Eustace Scrubb from The Chronicles of Narnia, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, played by Will Poulter. There's a reason his name sounds like Useless Scrub. And last but certainly not least, Christian Grey from 50 Shades of Grey and 50 Shades Darker, played by Jamie Dornan. 50 Shades of Fucked Up is not even the beginning of what is wrong with this manipulative, abusive, asshole man-child. And the worst of the worst supporting character is Christian Grey from 50 Shades. Was there any doubt? He is an abuser. He deserves to rot in a hole for all of eternity.
After hearing about all the good guys, we should give all the villains we love to hate some credit too. And boy do we love to hate them. Scar from The Lion King, voiced by Jeremy Irons. He's manipulative in a way that's surprisingly mature for a kids movie. Also, his voice is cool. Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians, played by Glenn Close. She rocks the role and has so much fun indulging in maximum cheese and insanity. Syndrome from The Incredibles, voiced by Jason Lee. An enjoyable baddie who is also an interesting critique of fanboy culture. Palpatine from Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, played by Ian McDiarmid. You can't shackle the cackle. The Joker from The Dark Knight, played by Heath Ledger. Creepy, intimidating, yet somehow kind of funny. One of the best adaptations of the Joker ever. Loki from The Avengers, played by Tom Hiddleston. Another very entertaining villain that also has a really good redemption arc in later movies. Captain Chantal Dubois from Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, voiced by Frances McDormand. She's just absolutely bonkers. There's nothing more to really say about her. Raul Silva from Skyfall, played by Javier Bardem. A complicated villain. You don't know whether you should fear him, respect him, or pity him. Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming, played by Michael Keaton. An everyman that is very relatable despite his selfish actions. Also possibly has the most intimidating car ride ever seen. And last but not least, considering what he made a single snap do, Thanos from Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, played by Josh Brolin. Despite being powerful and intimidating, he does legitimately believe what he's doing is the right thing, and it's not just for his own personal gain. So the winner of this dastardly bunch is The Joker from The Dark Knight is easily the star of the film and the reason The Dark Knight is as good as it is. You just can't take your eyes off of him.
Give me one reason why I shouldn't have my boy here pull your head off.
How about a magic trick? I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. Ta-da! It's gone.
But for every great villain, there are some major stinkers. Whether they're super lame or super annoying, these villains are just the worst. Lestat de Lioncourt from The Interview with the Vampire, played by Tom Cruise. I mean, sure, his acting is pretty good, but the fact that he is portrayed as a sympathetic character while he's completely horrible just doesn't work at all. Also, he's a pretentious douchebag. Peter Ludlow from The Lost World Jurassic Park, played by Arliss Howard. Because that's what we want to see in a Jurassic Park movie, a pathetic wimp of a businessman. Kevin McMaxford from Spice World, played by Barry Humphries. He wants to expose the Spice Girls! Ooh. Sebastian Crane from Hollow Man, played by Kevin Bacon. A dickhead with a god complex that's also super rapey! Yeah, that's totally enjoyable to watch! The aliens from Signs. Let's invade a planet covered in what our species feels as acid. What could possibly go wrong? Madison Lee from Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, played by Demi Moore. A random nobody that comes out of nowhere and is super forgettable. Heather Jasper Howe from Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, played by Alicia Silverstone. Another random nobody that comes out of nowhere and is also super forgettable. Blackheart from Ghost Rider, played by Wes Bentley. A hot topic edgelord who acts all badass despite being just a pathetic tryhard. The Fallen from Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, voiced by Tony Todd. He's built up throughout the whole movie, only to get his ass kicked in under a minute by Optimus Prime. And finally, Vic Hoskins from Jurassic World, played by Vincent D'Onofrio. Because bringing dinosaurs into the military is a fucking brilliant idea, isn't it? And the suckiest bad guy ever are the fucking aliens from Signs. The premise is so fucking dumb, and the spacefaring aliens are so pathetic, it's just sad.
Great characters can definitely stand on their own, but it would be really great if they had an awesome plot to do things in. Here are some of the most compelling plots we came across. Forrest Gump. On one hand, it seems very bare bones, but the simple premise spirals out of control, but in a very good way. Die Hard with a Vengeance. What could have been just another dumb action movie ended up having a legitimately interesting and engaging plot. Apollo 13. This true story really packs on the suspense without feeling emotionally manipulative. Babe. The fact that they made a movie about farm animals just messing around this engaging is extremely impressive. And very, very cute. The Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, you know, all of them. A huge epic that, despite being around 10 hours long in total, somehow feels balanced and satisfying. Man on Fire. It could have either gone extremely dark and gory or over the top and mindless, but instead it strikes an excellent balance of emotional and gripping. I Am Legend. This movie truly exemplifies the emotional and physical struggles of people living in an apocalyptic environment. The Lego Movie. It's a silly and fun story that is blown wide open by the excellent twist reveal. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. It takes characters that we already like and puts them in a world-changing situation while also being suspenseful and unpredictable. And finally, Mission Impossible: Fallout. The mystery and the tension are built up extremely well on top of standing on its own within the franchise. And And the most captivating plot is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. It's tense, dramatic, it keeps you on your toes, all while developing the characters in a very unique and interesting way. It's a real turning point in the MCU overall.
Okay, well, unfortunately, there were some movies that either had terrible plots or, really in some cases, no plots whatsoever. Tin Cup. You know it's bad when the golf game is by far the best part simply because no one talks. My Best Friend's Wedding. The entire plot is built around a messed up premise that follows a sympathetic quote-unquote character that you do not like at all or understand motivations from. Spice World. This is not a movie. It's just an advertisement, basically. Epic Movie. This is not a movie. This is an abomination. They had to put movie in the title just to convince you that what you're watching and what you paid for was something worthwhile. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Interdimensional, ancient, psychic zombie aliens. I don't think anyone saw that coming as ever being involved in an Indiana Jones movie. He's just not that into you. A mind-numbing catastrophe. Someone played 52-card pickup with a script. The Transformers sequels. They get longer and longer, and yet less and less happens. Also explosions. The Chronicles of Narnia, Voyage of the Dawn Treader. A video game side quest with ridiculous Christian overtones that also ruined the two characters that were still kinda decent. Minions.
Oh, hello, Papagena. Tu le bella con la papaya.
And finally, 50 Shades Darker. Even ignoring the horrible themes and messages, this plot is so devoid of anything of substance that it's actually kind of impressive. The winner of this terrible category is, I mean, you probably guessed it, but it's 50 Shades Darker. What even happens in this movie? It's amazing how little actually happened in these 2 hours, and the worst part is, somehow the book is even worse.
Probably the most underappreciated aspects of movies are their soundtracks. These soundtracks perfectly match the mood they are trying to convey and fill your head with memorable tunes. Forrest Gump. Fantasia 2000. The Harry Potter series. The Lord of the Rings series. The Pirates of the Caribbean series. The Incredibles. Ratatouille. Inception. Skyfall.
Let the sky fall when it crumbles. We will stand tall and face it all together at Skyfall.
And Blade Runner 2049. And the winner is Skyfall. Besides the really good theme by Adele, the musical score in general adds a lot to the movie's tone, even though the scenes would work well without it, but they added the music anyway to make it even better.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, how do you pick a worst soundtrack? Does sound design really matter? Well, yeah, it does. And here are some of the more exceptional ones, in a bad way. The Saint. There is an incomprehensible scene where two different tracks play at the same time while characters are talking. Armageddon. A bunch of late 90s rock that doesn't fit the mood at all! He's all that. Really vapid pop songs that are just there to pad out the time, really. Hollow Man. More late 90s rock that doesn't fit anything. The Grinch. They butchered the classic songs. And the Who's need auto-tune. That should say everything. Lara Croft, Tomb Raider. More of that good old 90s rock that doesn't fit. Daredevil. Harley's Angels, Bull Throttle. They play a bunch of pandering popular songs that feel really forced and obvious. Shark Tale. Grating hip-hop song sung by Will Smith Fish. Just what we want in a kids movie. And finally, Disturbia. You know, we don't even hate this kind of music, but it just is used so poorly in these movies. And the winner for worst sound and sound design is The Saint. We've referenced it a lot, and it's incredible how they thought that doing that was a good idea. Just go experience it.
But movies also need their effects to shine through no matter what kind of story they are trying to tell. Some can be practical and some can be CGI, but how they are used is what makes a difference. Forrest Gump. Considering they spliced him into actual footage all the way back in 1994, it's pretty incredible. Die Hard with a Vengeance. When you consider these practical effects were used in an action movie, you come to appreciate this even more. Apollo 13. For 1995, the zero-gravity effects are way ahead of its time. Babe. Still the most realistic portrayal of talking animals 24 years later. 101 Dalmatians. They didn't talk, but the work needed to pull off this movie with all of these animals deserves a lot of credit. The Matrix. There's a reason this is held up as a staple in movie effects. The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. With even more practical effects, the movie really makes Middle-earth come to life. The Dark Knight. That was practical. That's all that needs to be said. Inception. Even though the CGI is used extremely well, there are also a surprising number of practical effects. And last but not least, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. They fully embrace the artistic potential of CGI and go all the way in terms of colors and design. And the effective winner is, I'm sorry for the pun, Inception! Effects are not always about realism. This movie uses practical effects and CGI to emphasize exactly what's going on with this movie, and it becomes very artistic and immersive.
That said, there has also been a lot of CGI that just doesn't hold up at all. These films stand above the rest for having the most bafflingly stupid effects, especially for now. Time Cop. We know it's 1994 CGI, but come on. Jumanji. This really has not aged well at all, both the CGI and the practical effects. Twister. When an explosion in your movie looks like a fan edit, you done fucked up. Blade. Just... what the hell was that? Hollow Man. When the PlayStation 2 can render a better gorilla. Lara Croft Tomb Raider. That's not how that works! Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. When the old cartoon portrays the monsters better than the live-action movie, you know something's wrong. Ghost Rider. What's supposed to be creepy and realistic just ends up being ridiculous and stupid. The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug. There's a reason The Lord of the Rings used mostly practical effects. That gold looks really bad. And last, and possibly least, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. This might not look that bad at first compared to the others, but this came out in 2016. And the film that looks the most bafflingly stupid is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. This would look bad in 2001, yet it's less than 3 years old. Honestly, that's just embarrassing.
Effects sometimes don't mean much if they aren't shot and edited correctly, and the scale of some of these films is actually pretty mind-blowing. Here are our picks for best visuals. Titanic. They pulled off the scale with CGI from 1997. It's a Titanic feat! Please don't kill me. Tarzan. Extremely impressive hand-drawn 2D animation that still stands the test of time. Castaway. This movie is entirely visual storytelling, and the landscapes are utilized perfectly. Finding Nemo. The fact that they pulled off all the different ocean environments back in 2003 is highly remarkable. Like, just look at all this! The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Another movie that revels in its scale in terms of the landscape and the battles. This is world building. Kung Fu Panda. A movie named Kung Fu Panda has incredibly unique and vivid visual style. Go figure. Avatar, a landmark film, and everyone knows why. It deserves to be here. Skyfall. They take scenes that could be very standard and spice them up with unique colors and unusual editing. Gravity. One of the most immersive experiences. The camera work and editing is really, you just really gotta be in it, you know? And finally, Blade Runner 2049. The colors tell the story. The fact that you know exactly where I'm talking about when I say orange says a lot. And the prettiest or grandest movie is Gravity. They didn't need to hold that opening shot for 13 minutes, but they did. And that's what makes this movie fantastic.
As was mentioned, effects can mean nothing if they are not synced and edited correctly. Spice World. It's basically one giant music video. There's a reason music videos are 3 minutes long, though. Armageddon. When you can't get the gravity right after mentioning it, you really need to start over, or at least just not mention it being a problem. Lara Croft Tomb Raider. The editing during the action scenes is so fast and all from different angles. You can't even really tell when anyone dies. Charlie's Angels Full Throttle. The action scenes are shot so poorly. Again, you really can't tell what's going on. Shark Tale. They shouldn't have lips. Alice in Wonderland. For a place called Wonderland, it is lacking in color, uniqueness, actually pretty much everything. And the fact that it's apparently Underland doesn't make it any better. Journey 2, The Mysterious Island. They ride giant bees. It looks as dumb as it sounds. Transformers, Age of Extinction. So much slow-mo. There's also Dinobots that are literally in the movie for 9 minutes. I think it actually would have been more interesting if they were actual dinosaurs. Taken 3. The editing literally makes you want to throw up. It's like trying to watch a movie while on a teacup ride. And finally, again I am saying this, 50 Shades Darker. Really basic things like consistent weather just don't happen in this movie. And the film that made us want to gorge our eyes out the most is Shark Tale. Has there ever been a major animated release that's this ugly? They had to try to make it look this bad.
The technical aspects of a film are one thing, but movies are very personal and emotional experiences. These are the films that impacted us extremely strongly, usually making some of us cry. Forrest Gump. What could have been a very generic and lifeless movie ends up being very impactful and charming. Apollo 13. It puts you in the shoes of the astronauts in space and those on the ground, letting you feel the emotions from both ends. Titanic. Despite not liking the main characters, the emotional weight of this tragedy still comes through. Life is Beautiful. What starts off as a goofy romp ends up in a concentration camp. Yeah, this one hurts. Remember the Titans. What could have been an obnoxious movie about dude bro football players is a legitimately touching story with great character moments. Man on Fire. A father-daughter story with an ex-hitman as its protagonist. It has its really cool moments, but also its touching and heartfelt ones. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. This story, with a gimmicky premise, ends up being emotionally powerful, moving, and thought-provoking. Up. It probably has the most mature handling of a relationship ever, and it's in a fucking Pixar movie. Gravity. Just 90 minutes is enough time to make you live through a gut-wrenching story and bring you back home. And lastly, Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame. The 1-2 punch of Infinity War's devastating ending and Endgame's emotional payoff is incredibly strong as it brings together all 22 films of the MCU. And the movie that made us bawl our eyes out the most is, well, actually two movies. Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame. These two films together hold such a strong and yet polarizing emotional core. They accomplish exactly what they needed to cap off the Infinity Saga in an incredible and moving way.
So you make a movie and set out to, get an emotional reaction of some kind. Comedy should make you laugh, drama should make you cry, romance should make you feel all mushy inside. But what if a drama made you laugh and a romance made you want to throw a chair out the window? Dumb and Dumber. This is supposed to be one of the classic comedies. It never made us laugh, but it did make us scream in anger. Tin Cup. When you feel worse for the broken golf clubs than the lunatic breaking them, I think you've made a hard sell with the inspiring message. Spice World. A movie even die-hard Spice Girl fans would rather forget. And no, aliens don't like them either. City of Angels. There's a scene where Meg Ryan gets hit by a truck, and they made it funny. Also, Nicolas Cage as an angel creeping around in the background is just too much. Shakespeare in Love. How do you disrespect a real-life person so much that you'd make a play he intended to be a parody based off his love story? Runaway Bride. Commitment can be a problem for some people, but this takes it to obnoxious extremes. Hollow Man. Horror movies are supposed to be scary, not aggravating, obnoxious, rage-inducing, or triggering. The Grinch. This was supposed to be a kids' movie, but ended up traumatizing a lot of kids. It was one strike against the Dr. Seuss adaptations. By the way, 2 of those kids are in this group. So, thanks, Grinch. Thanks, Jim Carrey. Bringing down the house. It's very, very, very racist. That's all you really need to know. And finally, 2 movies that are basically the same in how fucking horrible they are 50 Shades of Grey and 50 Shades Darker. This is marketed as a love story. If this is your story, please call for help. We're being serious here. And the movie that failed to sell its message is Dumb and Dumber, the comedy that made me scream in anger. Yeah, here you go. Take it, Dumb and Dumber. Take it.
So while we knew about some of these movies, there were a lot, especially in the beginning, that we had no idea what to expect. These are the movies we thought were going to go one way, but ended up going another. In a good way, of course. Die Hard with a Vengeance. We expected a dumb action movie, but we got a legitimately entertaining and interesting movie that makes us want to go see the original too. Titanic. Considering how often you hear people trash talk Jack and Rose, we didn't expect the rest of the film to still elevate things up significantly. Tarzan. As one of the Disney films that doesn't get much attention, we were pleasantly surprised with how much we enjoyed it. Remember the Titans. Sports movies are usually very basic and unengaging. This proved otherwise. Save the Last Dance. While not a great movie, the fact that this is an MTV romance movie that's not completely trash is already a miracle. Man on Fire. Another action movie that we thought would have no substance and would be full of gore. But the story and characters bring this together into something extremely solid, even if it does have a little bit of gore. I Am Legend. We expected a dumb zombie movie, and while I couldn't watch it for other reasons, I can understand why the other 2 got mentally crushed. The Maze Runner. Considering the acclaim, quote-unquote, of young adult dystopias, we were surprised that this movie ended up being decently engaging, though its sequels were somewhat confusing. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We expected something goofy, but instead we got a movie with legitimate emotion and character growth. And finally, The Meg. For it not being god-awful trash, I mean, it's not good, but the fact that it's actually competent is mind-blowing. And the surprise winner is Die Hard with a Vengeance. It became a standard for us in ranking movies.
On the other hand, these movies ended up being noticeably worse than we expected. Doesn't mean we necessarily think all of these films are terrible, but they all fell below our expectations. Pulp Fiction. While we don't hate the film, we don't exactly find this to be one of the greatest movies of all time. Dumb and Dumber. A dumb comedy that everyone loves, ha ha ha! Yeah, no, fuck off. Armageddon. This movie had a sacrifice that others have said is really moving. We, on the other hand, just got impatient, waiting for him to kill himself. Shakespeare in Love. This won Best Picture. American Beauty. Another classic movie that's just not for us. Spy Kids. A movie that many people look back on fondly from their childhoods. Please rewatch it and reconsider. The Interpreter. A movie that many like that has an interesting premise, but we just found it pretty boring and unengaging. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Considering all the other Harry Potter movies are quite solid, this was a noticeable step down in quality and cohesion. The Hobbit and the Battle of the Five Armies. Considering how great the Lord of the Rings trilogy is, and how the first Hobbit movie had potential, the result is extremely lackluster and disappointing. And finally, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I know everyone craps on the sequel, but this movie was just a mess. And the film that left us with the most disappointment is Dumb and Dumber. The fact that so many people think this film is funny is legitimately baffling to us. I'm not trying to sound condescending, but literally how?
Okay, we did it! We watched 300 movies! Yay! But, which ones were the best? So these are the most gripping of thrillers, the most heart-wrenching of dramas, and the most complete packages overall. Forrest Gump. Die Hard with a Vengeance.
What the fuck happened? You got a AAA card?
Apollo 13.
Odyssey Houston, welcome home. We're glad to see you.
Toy Story 2.
When she loved me, when somebody loved me, everything was beautiful. Every hour we spent together lives within my heart. When she loved me.
The Incredibles. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Up. Gravity. The Lego Movie.
Is this another vision? Where am I? Is that the office tower? Bricksburg. What was that? No, 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 no! What in the world is that?
Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
The Martian.
Everywhere I go, I'm the first. It's a strange feeling. Step outside the rover, first guy to be there. Climb that hill, first guy to do that. 4.5 billion years, nobody here. And now, me. I'm the first person to be alone on an entire planet.
Spider-Man Homecoming.
That's terrible what happened down there in D.C., though. Were you scared? I bet you were glad when your old pal Spider-Man showed up in the elevator, though.
Yeah, well, I actually didn't go up. I saw it off on the ground. Yeah. Very lucky that he was there that day.
Good old Spider-Man.
Thor Ragnarok.
He's the reigning. He's the defending. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you your incredible
Yes!
I have to get off this planet.
Avengers Infinity War.
You should have gone for the head.
Avengers Endgame.
Avengers!
Assemble.
And the winner is Up. On the surface, it's a fun adventure with relatable characters that would already be pretty damn good. But with the added emotion and one of the best portrayals of all types of relationships in film, this movie becomes quite a masterpiece.
So, I'm sure you are all already well aware that we didn't love every movie we saw in this challenge of watching 300 of the highest grossing movies of every month since June 1994. But not every terrible movie should be treated the same. So without further ado, here are the worst, at least of our opinions. Dumb and Dumber.
Want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Bed of Roses.
Flowers. I cleaned out the city.
And you made this incredible arrangement of flowers for someone you've never even met?
Marry him now.
Tin Cup.
And sometimes I catch that 3 a little thin, too.
Don't do this.
And I've hit flowers with the 4.
Hit the damn ball, Roy.
I've hooked my 5. I shanked the 6. Sculled the 8. Batted the 9. Chili dipped the wedge. And I bladed the sand.
Putter?
Yeah. There is old Mr. Three Wiggle, isn't there?
My Best Friend's Wedding.
For 9 years. Me?
I can see why.
Look, she has known him for what, like 5 seconds? I can't lose him, George. I'm a busy girl. I've got 4 days to break up a wedding and steal the bride's.
Spice World.
Blah, 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 girl power, feminism, do you know what I mean?
Shakespeare in Love.
Come on, Will.
I heard you were a poet.
I was a poet till now.
Shakespeare!
My heart belongs to you, but I will marry Wessex a week from Saturday.
Runaway Bride.
Bows down the aisle, knocking old ladies out of her way like the running of the bulls in Pamplona.
I'm profoundly and irreversibly screwed up.
Sweet Home
Down
Alabama.
here and give me a divorce.
As I live and struggle for breath.
Please sign these papers.
The only reason I ain't signing is because you've turned into some hoity-toity Yankee.
Just
To the honeymoon from hell!
I said he cut our tape with a Chinese grandmaster.
Well, I hope he showed you how to pull a fire poker out of you!
Bringing Down the
You and
House.
cheese and spread you over a cracker.
Boy, you are some kind of freaky.
You got me straight tripping, boo.
American Wedding.
And me. We've got it together, baby.
I'm sorry.
The Pink Panther.
I will attack you. In this way, I will keep you vigilant and alert.
Good one.
Thank you.
50 Shades of Grey.
I'd like to know more about you.
There's really not much to know about me. Look at me.
I am.
Minions.
Les bidous? Matoka! Polano la Matoka. Hein? Banana? Stuart? Banana! Banana!
And finally, 50 Shades Darker.
I'm not very good at this. I've never wanted to try again. Have dinner with me.
Okay, fine. I will have dinner with you. Because I'm hungry.
And the winner is 50 Shades Darker. It's disgusting, incomprehensible, moronic, rage-inducing, disturbing, and mind-numbing. It deserves every piece of hatred thrown at it. Every single one.
And that does it. The 300 movie challenge is officially complete. Let us know what your picks are in the comments. We'll be taking a bit of break in making videos. We have been working on this whole project for over 2 years. But we'll be back soon enough with more movie discussions as well as new things that may pique your interest. So, see you then.